With their help, the United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement Homeland Security Investigations Office arranged humanitarian visas for Jose and his family. It was the lifeline they'd been waiting for. Once in Albuquerque, New Mexico, the family found refuge at the First Baptist Church of Rio Rancho. The church community, deeply moved by Jose's story, raised funds and connected them with the University of New Mexico Children's Hospital. It wasn't just an act of charity. It was the start of a transformation. The operation that followed was nothing short of extraordinary. A team of 25 specialists worked together in a 12-hour marathon surgery to remove as much of the tumor as possible, nearly one-third of its massive bulk. To make things safer, doctors tried something unusual. They prescribed Viagra, yes, that Viagra, to help shrink the blood vessels feeding the tumor before the procedure. And believe it or not, it worked. By the end of the surgery, the team had successfully removed a growth almost a foot long and 4 inches wide and deep. When Jose woke up, his world had changed. For the first time in years, he could tilt his head. He could breathe freely. He could sleep without fear. Of course, recovery wasn't instant. Over the next 2 years, Jose underwent follow-up treatments, smaller surgeries, and therapy to help rebuild strength and mobility. There are still scars, both visible and invisible. But there's also something stronger: hope. He now attends school, plays with other kids, and smiles without hesitation. The doctors might call it a medical success, but really, it's something more human than that. Jose's story is a reminder that compassion and courage can move mountains, or in this case, tumors. It's about the power of strangers coming together to give one boy a chance at life, and the power of that boy to never stop fighting for it. Because even when every breath hurt, Jose smiled. Not because it was easy, but because it was his way of saying, "I'm still here." From a boy crushed by his own body to a man whose towering frame made him larger than life. Number 9. Richard Kiel, the gentle giant behind the monster. When most people picture a movie villain, they think of someone cold, calculating, and, well, terrifying. And that's exactly what Richard Kiel looked like on screen. A mountain of a man with steel teeth and a glare sharp enough to cut glass. But the truth? Off camera, he was more teddy bear than terror. Richard Kiel was born in the late 1930s in Detroit, Michigan. A man literally built for the big screen. He stood over 7 feet tall, thanks to a rare condition called acromegaly, which causes the body to produce excess growth hormone. While it gave him his commanding presence, it also came with serious health challenges. His joints ached, his bones grew too quickly, and simple movement could be painful. But instead of letting that stop him, Kiel used his stature to his advantage and became one of the most recognizable faces in cinema history. He started his acting journey in the early 1960s, appearing in television shows like Laramie and The Twilight Zone. In that iconic Twilight Zone episode, To Serve Man, he played a giant alien, a fitting warm-up for a career built on towering roles. He later appeared in The Longest Yard and Pale Rider, but his true breakout moment came in 1977 when he stepped into the steel shoes of Jaws, the unforgettable villain in The Spy Who Loved Me. Jaws was supposed to die at the end of that film, eaten by a shark in the villain's underwater lair. But test audiences loved him too much. They didn't see just a monster. They saw something magnetic, even oddly charming. So the filmmakers did something rare. They rewrote the ending. Jaws survived. And because of that, Kiel returned 2 years later in Moonraker, turning a once terrifying henchman into a fan favorite. Playing Jaws wasn't easy. Those metal teeth were real, heavy, uncomfortable, and so tight he could barely talk with them in. But Kiel endured it, because he knew what the role meant. When audiences first saw that gleaming grin bite through steel cables, the world gasped. And yet through it all, Richard infused Jaws with a surprising depth. Beneath the menace was humor, even heart. In Moonraker, when Jaws found love with the bespectacled dolly, audiences melted. Somehow the villain had become the hero. Of course, fame has a way of following you, even decades later. To this day, I go out in sunglasses and a hat because people shout, "Hey, Jaws!" from across the street, he once laughed in an interview. He joked that Jaws was like the Roadrunner, Coyote keeps trying to blow him up, but he just keeps going. Off-set, Richard Kiel couldn't have been more different from his on-screen persona. He was a gentle, soft-spoken man, deeply religious, and dedicated to his wife and children. He loved storytelling, humor, and connecting with fans, always humble despite his global fame. He even wrote an autobiography, making it big in the movies, published in the early 2000s, where he shared his journey from struggling actor to Hollywood legend. And he wasn't just the guy with the teeth. Over the years, Kiel took on a surprising range of roles. The menacing Voltaire in The Wild West, the lovable giant Mr. Larson in Happy Gilmore, and even the voice of Vlad in Disney's Tangled. He also reprised Jaws for James Bond video games, cementing his place in pop culture for a new generation. But beyond the fame and filmography, what made Richard Kiel unforgettable wasn't just his size, it was his heart. He often spoke about how acromegaly had shaped his life, not as a curse, but as a lesson in gratitude. "People see me as larger than life," he said once, "but I'm just thankful to be alive." In his later years, health issues forced him to slow down, yet his spirit never dimmed. When he passed away in 2014, tributes poured in from fans and colleagues alike, not just for the actor who played one of the most iconic Bond villains ever, but for the man who turned a monster into something almost human. Richard Kiel was proof that even the biggest, scariest figures can have the gentlest souls. He lived large, in height, in talent, and in heart. While Kiel stood tall on screen, Ram Singh Chauhan grew his legend one strand of hair at a time. Number 8. Ram Singh Chauhan, the man with the longest mustache. Remember when almost every guy on the planet decided to grow a beard? The phase where everyone thought scruffy meant mysterious, and the more tangled it looked, the better. Some even added glitter, beads, and fairy lights to theirs. Bold move, gentlemen. But here's the truth. None of that comes close to Ram Singh Chauhan, the man whose mustache doesn't just turn heads, it commands respect. This legend from Jaipur, India holds the Guinness World Record for the longest mustache in the world, stretching an unbelievable 18.5 feet. That's taller than a full-grown giraffe. What started as a simple act of self-expression has turned into a lifelong journey, and a living symbol of Indian pride, tradition, and identity. Ram Singh's story began in the early 1970s, inspired by the rich Rajasthani culture, where a mustache isn't just facial hair, but a mark of honor, manhood, and dignity. He decided to grow his own. In Rajasthan, a grand mustache has always been more than style. It's a statement. Warriors once swirled them like banners of pride, and even today it remains a quiet badge of heritage. For Ram Singh, it became both his passion and his legacy. Of course, growing and maintaining a mustache that could practically wrap around a car isn't easy. His grooming routine is almost sacred. Every single day, he oils it, combs it, massages it, and carefully wraps it to keep it from tangling or breaking. It takes hours, patience, discipline, and an unshakable sense of purpose. He once said he spends about 2 hours a day on his mustache, though he only washes it every 2 weeks. By the time his mustache reached world record length, Ram Singh had already become something of a folk hero. When he was officially measured in Rome in 2010, his mustache was just over 14 feet. By 2019, it had grown to nearly 19 feet, a personal triumph that took more than 4 decades of commitment. Most people can't stick to a diet for a week. Ram Singh? He stuck to a mustache for 40 years. His incredible facial hair has earned him fame far beyond India. He's been featured in the Guinness World Records, appeared on international television, and even shared the screen with James Bond. Yes, really. In the 1983 Bond film Octopussy, shot partly in India, his trademark mustache made a cameo appearance. He's also graced Bollywood films, cultural festivals, and countless photo ops with politicians and celebrities. "People always compliment my mustache," he said once with a laugh, "even the President of India." But beneath the fame and curiosity, Ram Singh remains remarkably grounded. He doesn't see his mustache as vanity. To him, it's a part of who he is. It connects him to his ancestors, his land, and a culture that still values strength wrapped in grace. A mustache and beard have always been symbols of pride for men, he said. Through mine, I've earned name, fame, and respect. There's something beautifully old-fashioned about that. In a world obsessed with filters and trends, here's a man who turned patience and tradition into art. But not all rare traits are easy to carry. For one young man in China, even standing straight was a dream that seemed impossible. Number 7. Jang Yan Chen, the folded boy who refused to break. Imagine spending your entire life looking down, not by choice but because your body wouldn't let you lift your head. That was the reality of Jang Yan Chen, a young man from Shandong, China, known across the country as the folded boy. Born with ankylosing spondylitis, a rare and brutal form of arthritis that fuses the spine, Zhang's back slowly bent forward until his head was nearly touching his hips. By the time he was a teenager, he stood barely a meter tall. For most people, that would have been the end of dreams, but not for Zhang. While others saw limitation, he found determination. He studied lying flat on a mat, sometimes kneeling, sometimes in pain, but always moving forward. When exam day came, he didn't ask for sympathy. He simply asked for space. And took his high school entrance exam lying on a yoga mat. And guess what? He passed. Zhang earned admission to Dezhou University, where he majored in energy and power engineering, a choice that couldn't be more symbolic for someone who embodied both energy and power in the purest sense. But even as his mind soared, his body continued to fold. The pain was constant, and the risks were growing. Breathing, eating, even sleeping became challenges that no 21-year-old should have to face. Then came a turning point. A team of doctors led by Dr. Wang Yu at Ping University Hospital took on his case, one of the most extreme ever seen. In 2023, Zhang underwent a series of daring operations designed to literally rebuild his body. The procedures involved stretching, breaking, and realigning his spine. Surgeries so complex that even the slightest mistake could have caused paralysis or worse. The first surgery focused on restoring his neck and upper spine, allowing him to finally lift his head and look straight ahead. The second reduced the fold in his back from a full 180 degrees to 90. A monumental step towards standing upright. After years of seeing the world from the floor, he could finally see faces again, walls, windows, the sky. For Zhang, that alone felt like freedom. Recovery was brutal. Each movement came with pain, each breath with fear. There were risks of nerve damage, heart complications, and infection. But Zhang kept smiling, that quiet, unshakable smile that told everyone he was still fighting. And when he finally lay flat in a hospital bed for the first time in his life, nurses cried. His mother did too. The folded boy was unfolding at last. Today, Yang is still on his journey. More corrective surgeries lie ahead, but each one brings him closer to a full life, one where he can stand, walk, and maybe even run. His story has moved millions across China, not because of his suffering, but because of his refusal to surrender. If Zhang taught us the power of perseverance, David Aguilar showed us that sometimes creativity can rebuild what nature left incomplete. Number 6. David Aguilar. Amphu, the Lego engineer with one arm. When most kids played with Lego, they built castles, spaceships, or race cars. David Aguilar, on the other hand, built himself a future, one brick at a time. Born in Andorra with Poland syndrome, a rare genetic condition that left him without a right forearm and pectoral muscle, David could have easily accepted life with limits. But he didn't. Where others saw a missing limb, he saw a missing project. His story isn't one of pity. It's pure ingenuity wrapped in childlike imagination. His love affair with Lego began when he was just 5. Like most kids, he'd spend hours connecting bricks into wild shapes. But the seed of something bigger was already there. By the age of 9, David had a bold idea. If Lego could build cars and robots, why not build an arm? So he did. It wasn't perfect, more like a clunky mechanical sleeve, but it worked well enough for him to realize something powerful. He didn't need to wait for the world to fix him. He could engineer his own solution. Years later, as a teenager, David refined that first design into something extraordinary. His second prototype, the MK1, was a fully functional prosthetic arm built entirely out of Lego Technic pieces. Inspired by Iron Man's armor, he gave it the same superhero flair. Because honestly, if you're building your own robotic limb, why not go full Tony Stark? The arm could bend, grip, and even lift light objects, and it was made from the same colorful plastic most people step on. But David didn't stop there. He kept improving. MK2, MK3, MK4, and eventually MK5, each model more advanced than the last. The latest version had moving fingers powered by mechanical pulleys, an elbow joint that actually worked, and a sleek modular design that looked cooler than half the gadgets in a Marvel movie. And yes, all made from Lego. What made his creations even more impressive wasn't just the engineering, it was the message behind them. David was showing the world that innovation doesn't need a fancy lab or millions in funding. It just needs imagination, persistence, and a box of plastic bricks. When the Guinness World Records team heard about him, they didn't just take note. They awarded him the title of first person to build a functional prosthetic arm using Lego bricks. Not bad for a guy who started tinkering in his bedroom. Soon, Lego itself invited him to collaborate on educational projects that inspire kids to explore science and engineering through play. NASA even brought him to their Cross-Industry Innovation Summit, where he shared the stage with top engineers and scientists. But despite all the recognition, David has remained remarkably humble. He once said, "I never built this to be famous. I just wanted to tie my shoelaces with two hands." That simple human need turned into a mission much bigger than himself. David now studies bioengineering at the International University of Catalonia in Barcelona. His dream? To design affordable prosthetics for kids around the world who can't afford expensive medical versions. Through his brand, Han Solo, he sells merchandise to fund charities that support people with disabilities. And yes, he got Disney's official permission to use that name, because when you're living your dream, you might as well do it legally and stylishly. Everywhere he goes, David changes how people see disability. When kids meet him, they don't see a missing arm. They see a superhero engineer, a living example that creativity can rebuild what nature left incomplete. But not all extraordinary bodies are built stronger. Some are built without pain at all. Number 5. Stephen Peat, the man who couldn't feel pain. Imagine stubbing your toe and not even noticing, or touching a hot stove and smelling burnt skin before realizing it's yours. Sounds like a superpower, right? For Stephen Peat, it was a lifelong curse disguised as invincibility. Stephen was born in Washington State with a condition so rare it almost sounds made up: congenital insensitivity to pain, or CIP. Simply put, his nerves can feel texture, pressure, and temperature, but the signal for pain never reaches his brain. There are fewer than 100 documented cases in the world. Stephen didn't just have it, so did his twin brother Chris. From the very start, it was clear something was different. As a baby, Stephen would chew on his tongue until it bled. His parents thought he was teething, until they noticed chunks of his tongue missing. He didn't cry, didn't flinch, just kept going. The doctors didn't have fancy DNA tests back in 1981, so they resorted to something that sounds medieval now. They held a Bunsen burner under his tiny foot. His skin blistered. Stephen didn't even twitch. That's when they knew. Their son literally couldn't feel pain. Growing up, Stephen's childhood looked normal, at least from the outside. But behind every smile was danger. He'd fall off his bike, break bones, twist ankles, and keep playing like nothing happened. Once he walked on a broken leg for days before anyone realized he was injured. To him, pain wasn't a thing. There was no ouch, no warning, no reason to stop. He and his twin brother became the kids who could survive anything. But what started as a novelty soon turned tragic. One night, Chris developed internal complications from an untreated injury, something that might have been fixable if he'd felt pain. By the time it was caught, it was too late. Stephen lost his brother to the very thing that made them different. That's when the illusion of invincibility shattered. Stephen's life has been a constant balancing act, learning to live in a body that won't scream for help. Burns, fractures, infections. He's had them all. Once he went nearly 9 months with a fractured spine before realizing something was wrong. When doctors finally took x-rays, they asked if he'd been in a car crash. He hadn't. The real culprit? A day of sledding gone wrong, a hard fall, a twisted back, and no pain to warn him he'd broken 3 vertebrae. Here's the cruel paradox. Pain, as much as we hate it, protects us. It's the alarm that says, "Hey, don't do that again." Without it, life becomes a guessing game. Every bruise, every burn, every movement could be hiding something dangerous. Stephen eventually learned to check himself constantly, scanning for cuts, swelling, or redness like someone else might check their phone. Even so, injuries slip through. He's had countless surgeries, infections, and nerve damage, all because his body stays silent when it should be screaming. But instead of letting his condition isolate him, Stephen turned it into a mission. He began working with researchers and advocacy groups to raise awareness about CIP and other rare nerve disorders. He's helped scientists study the genetic mechanisms behind pain, hoping one day that understanding his condition might lead to breakthroughs for people on the opposite end, those living with chronic pain. While Stephen's body couldn't feel pain, Tim Cridland learned to control it. Number 4. Tim Cridland, the torture king who made pain his stage. Most people avoid pain. Tim Cridland built an entire career out of it. Under the name Zamora the Torture King, Tim became one of the most talked-about sideshow performers in the world. A man who could pierce his own skin with skewers, swallow swords, lie on beds of nails, and smile through it all. His performances aren't for the faint of heart. At first glance, it looks like madness. But to Tim, it's art. Unlike most magicians, Tim doesn't hide behind illusions. There are no tricks, no fake props, no camera cuts. Every nail, every blade, every needle is real. And the most shocking part? He doesn't flinch. No scream, no grimace. Just calm focus as steel slides through muscle. The audience gasps, but Tim's expression never changes. So what's his secret? Some believe he's wired differently. Literally. Scientists who've studied him suggest he may have an unusually high pain threshold, possibly due to a rare nerve mutation. Others think it's all mental conditioning, that Tim has trained his brain to ignore pain signals through years of focus and meditation. Either way, he's a walking mystery of biology and psychology. But this fascination didn't start on stage. As a kid, Tim was obsessed with understanding human limits. While most kids collected baseball cards, he collected stories of yogis, fakirs, and endurance performers who could slow their heart rate or walk across burning coals. The idea that the mind could control the body completely hooked him. By the time he became Zamora the Torture King, he wasn't just chasing fame. He was exploring something deeper. The connection between pain, control, and consciousness. For him, every performance is a test, not of muscle, but of mind. His acts are brutal to watch, but strangely mesmerizing. He's been pierced through the arms, skewered through the cheeks, and pinned to boards with steel rods. Yet he insists that what he does isn't about shock for shock's sake. It's not about feeling pain, he said in interviews. It's about transcending it. And that's where Tim's story becomes more than just sideshow spectacle. His work challenges how we think about pain itself, not as a punishment, but as a gateway to understanding what the human body and mind can truly endure. It's performance, philosophy, and biology all tangled into one. Of course, the crowd sees something else entirely, a man defying the impossible. And that's part of the allure. Tim Cridland embodies our deepest curiosity. What happens if we stop fearing pain? He's not immortal. He still bleeds, still scars, still heals. But each time he walks off stage, he proves a point, that the limits we think we have are often just suggestions. While Zamora's power came from the mind, Kuwar Amritbir Singh found his strength in pure, unfiltered willpower. Number 3. Kuwar Amritbir Singh, the self-made record breaker. If determination had a face, it would probably be sweating, smiling, and doing push-ups in a dusty backyard somewhere in Punjab. Meet Kuwar Amritbir Singh, a young man who turned a cattle shed into a world-class training ground, and his dreams into records that shook the fitness world. Born in the small village of Umarwala, Kuwar didn't have access to fancy gyms or shiny equipment. What he did have was a fiery drive and a pile of bricks, sandbags, and cement bottles. At 15, while most teens were busy scrolling through fitness influencers online, Kuwar was busy becoming one, the hard way. His early days looked nothing like your typical workout montage. Imagine a teenage boy lifting sacks of sand instead of dumbbells, doing push-ups on rough floors, and training his body with tools he built himself. No supplements, no mirrors. Just discipline, sweat, and sheer stubbornness. By 17, his hard work paid off. Kuwar smashed his first major milestone by performing 118 knuckle push-ups in just 1 minute, earning him a national record. The world started paying attention. But he wasn't done. Soon came 35 Superman push-ups in 30 seconds. And later, the most fingertip clap push-ups in 1 minute. Each record added another chapter to his story. The story of a boy who refused to let limitations define him. In 2022, Kuwar entered the Guinness World Records with a jaw-dropping feat. 86 fingertip push-ups in 1 minute with a 20-pound weight strapped to his back. But here's what makes him special. Kuwar never chased fame. He chased self-mastery. Failure didn't scare him. In fact, he failed his math exam in school once and thought his future was ruined. Instead of giving up, he decided one bad grade wouldn't decide his destiny. He rebuilt his confidence, one push-up at a time. Today, Kuwar is more than a record holder. He's a youth icon and motivational speaker, inspiring thousands of young Indians to believe that dreams don't need expensive memberships. He often reminds his followers that India's legendary Pehlwans didn't need protein powders or machines, just willpower, homemade tools, and discipline. From a modest village to the Guinness World Records, Kuwar Amritbir Singh is proof that greatness doesn't come from comfort, it comes from courage. Kuwar may have built his power from the ground up. Pratik Mohite showed that even the smallest frame can hold the mightiest dream. Number 2. Pratik Mohite, the world's shortest bodybuilder. When people said he couldn't reach greatness, they weren't kidding. The gym equipment was literally taller than him. But that never stopped Pratik Mohite, the 3-foot-4-inch powerhouse from Maharashtra, India, who turned every limitation into leverage and became the world's shortest competitive bodybuilder, officially recognized by Guinness World Records in 2021. Born with short limbs and a compact frame, Pratik's story didn't begin in a gym. It began with doubt. Doctors once told his parents he might never walk properly. Yet as a kid he was restless, curious, and full of energy. And when he discovered bodybuilding in 2012, inspired by his uncle's training routine, he saw more than muscles. He saw a way to rewrite what strength could look like. But let's be honest, the gym wasn't exactly built for him. Most of the machines were too tall, the barbells too wide, and even basic grips were a challenge. Where others saw obstacles, Pratik saw opportunities for creativity. He used bricks for support, adjusted grips, and modified exercises until every rep felt like a small victory. His workouts became a symbol of innovation, proof that persistence beats perfect conditions every single time. Of course, it wasn't all applause and protein shakes. In the early days, people laughed. Some whispered that he was too small to be strong. But instead of snapping back, Pratik just smiled, then doubled his training. Within a few years, that same crowd was cheering for him at local bodybuilding events across Maharashtra. By 2016, Pratik entered his first official competition, standing, well, waist to shoulder with full-sized athletes and holding his own. His form, his confidence, his sheer willpower, they spoke louder than any muscle ever could. And when he finally earned his Guinness World Record in 2021, the world took notice. For Pratik, that wasn't just a personal victory. It was validation that effort, not inches, defines achievement. Pratik's life revolves around a rigorous routine. He starts his mornings with a 30-minute run, fuels up with a disciplined diet, and hits the gym for 2 hours every afternoon. Then another run in the evening. Because why rest when you're rewriting history? On weekends, he unwinds by playing cricket with his friends, a reminder that even world record holders need a good laugh and a game now and then. Beyond the gym, Pratik's story has become a source of hope for millions. On social media, he often shares messages about body positivity and resilience, reminding people that everybody, no matter the shape, size, or height, can achieve greatness with consistency and courage. And life keeps surprising him. In 2023, he he married his partner Jaya, who stands at 4 feet 2 inches tall. Together, they've become a symbol of strength, love, and fearlessness, proving that happiness, like muscle, is built one day at a time. And finally, let's meet a man whose strength doesn't just move hearts, it moves trains. Number 1. Rathakrishnan Velu, the man who pulled a train with his teeth. There are strong men, and then there's Rathakrishnan Velu, the man whose jaw could probably give a tow truck a run for its money. Known around the world as King Tooth, this Malaysian legend turned what sounds like a circus myth into cold, hard Guinness World Record history. On August 30th, 2007, in front of a live audience and official witnesses, he did the unthinkable. He pulled a 7-coach train weighing more than 260 tons, with nothing but his teeth. No machines, no tricks, no backup team. Just one man, a thick metal rope, and an iron will. Born in Malaysia, Rathakrishnan wasn't always a record breaker. As a boy, he was fascinated by stories of Indian fakirs, spiritual masters who could bend their bodies, control their minds, and perform feats that defied logic. His life changed when he met a guru from India who taught him something far more powerful than brute strength, the art of focus. Through meditation, breath control, and discipline, Rathakrishnan learned to channel his inner energy, the force he believes connects body, mind, and spirit. He trained for years, not in a fancy gym, but through relentless spiritual and physical conditioning. Every morning began with meditation and breathing exercises to strengthen his jaw, neck, and spine. Over time, he discovered how to lock his energy, how to summon all his focus into one single point of strength. That point for him was his jaw. So when the big day came in 2007, he wasn't nervous. Standing before the massive 7-coach train, Rathakrishnan closed his eyes, steadied his breath, and bit down on a steel rope. As the crowd held its breath, the train moved. Inch by inch, wheel by wheel, the behemoth rolled forward, powered by nothing but determination and one man's teeth. When it was over, the crowd erupted. Guinness officials confirmed it. Rathakrishnan Velu had just pulled a 260-ton train, setting a world record that has yet to be broken. But here's what makes him even more remarkable. He didn't do it for fame or fortune. Rathakrishnan performs these extraordinary stunts to raise awareness and funds for charitable causes. From pulling buses to lifting trucks, each feat is dedicated to helping others, especially underprivileged children. For him, true strength isn't about power, it's about purpose. Even today, Rathakrishnan continues to train and inspire, reminding people that greatness often begins in the most unexpected places, sometimes even in your jaw. He doesn't just pull weight, he lifts spirits. From pain to power, from limitation to legacy, these men aren't just rare. They're living reminders of what it truly means to be human. So which of these stories inspired you the most? What's your take on this? Share your perspective in the comments section. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.